Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here, back on the Reichwald Forest with another Total War Warhammer 3 land battle. This time around we are going to be playing as the forces of the Ogre Kingdoms, squaring off against the mighty Kislev led by Indy Pride. And in this matchup, it can be a bit difficult for ogres to make use of actual ogres. They tend to get shot to death, while the Kislevite infantry with its unbreakable trait just kind of holds their ground and rains arrows up down upon you. And thus, well, this build is really designed to avoid that whole pesky Kislevite infantry problem by bringing, well, a bunch of cavalry. Looking over the composition here, for my lord, I'm going to be rocking a Slaughtermaster of Beasts, and this is in fact the only true foot ogre in this entire build. He is going to be coming in with the Wild Heart, of course. He's the Dealer of Beasts, transformation of Kadon, as well as Pan's Impenetrable Belt. Pan's Impenetrable Belt now does boost melee defense, making it a very solid defensive spell. And of course, transformation of Kadon, the spell we all know and hate, does provide a lovely Manticore summon, which could help me get after Kislevite artillery, help him support in cav battles, that sort of thing. Because obviously, stuck on foot like this, even though he does have 54 speed, the Slaughtermaster will struggle to really get into range. He also does have the Blood Cleaver just for that HP regen, but otherwise, I'm gonna be walking around, doing some decent melee work against some of the cheaper Kislevite units, and when push comes to shove, maybe you can dish out some hurt to some better armor as well. Frontline composed entirely of Noblars, with a single unit of Noblar Trappers with the leftover funds here, gives us a pretty pitiful frontline force, but given that I have to rush, I want something to bog down the Kislevite infantry, waste their time, while the cavalry can really sweep around the flanks. Alternatively, against Kislev, you could bring a super heavy artillery build. Iron Blasters and Lead Belchers are both kind of broke OP at the moment, but I really didn't want to be doing that, so with this full rush, definitely going to be making use of Noblars, and I think that's going to be a standard for most ogre builds. Behind them, a single unit of Gorgers. Now these guys are certainly very vulnerable with 15 armor and lacking the missile resist of, say, Mourngulls, but they do have some very hefty offensive stats at 52 melee attack, plus 20 bonus versus infantry, 46 charge bonus, and 110 weapon strength. Most of that AP means they will mince through most Kislevite infantry. On the flanks, we do have multiple Mournfang cavalry units, Mournfang Iron Fists for those shields, extra armor, and just good all-around stats, backed up by Mournfang Cav with great weapons. These guys, of course, have bonus versus large, and they, of course, well, they have better bonus versus large, and a heftier, and actually, no, they don't get a heftier charge bonus, but bonus versus large is pretty clutch against the masses of cavalry you can expect from Kislev. And hopefully the Mournfang Cavalry here can provide some breakthrough power against the Kislevite hordes, especially backed by Saber-Tusk packs to do some soaking of charges and backline disruption. Unfortunately, Little Grom is already picking away, Mournfang Cav down 2 models, and that is one of those things that can really brutalize you. But fortunately, we've got 5 units of these Mournfang Cavalrymen. Now you can bring Crushers, which are even more heavily armored Mournfang Cav with even better melee stats, but they are very expensive, and that Grom shot right there shows exactly why I didn't really feel like bringing them. I don't want to pay another 400 gold just to lose a dozen models on the advance to Angry Grom. Now, for the Kislevite army, they are led by Kostaltin, the mighty priest of Ursun, and he is coming in here with quite the array of abilities. You can see Grom there. Unfortunately, not able to get shots on the Mournfang anymore, so he's taking pot shots at the unfortunate Noblars. But looking at Kostaltin here, monstrous combat stats. He does, of course, have all of his various battle hymns. He's got Saliak's Lullaby for that crazy heal, Tor's Battle Hymn for the melee attack, Dodge's Song of Winterlight for the Vigor regen, and Ursun's Roar for the charge bonus. So, quite a potent lineup of abilities. He himself, of course, has By Our Blood, just like all the other Kislevite units, so he won't break. The Courage of Sacrifice here, lovely AoE melee defense and leadership buff. And, of course, Blaze of Devotion, also granting bonus stats to nearby units as fire damage. So some really nasty stuff there. If I'd brought some healing magic, that would have potentially been a big problem. I wouldn't have really been able to heal my Mournfang Cav because of that fire damage. Alongside him, there is a Maiden of the Frosts, and she is going to be coming in with a Frost Shield passive, with Frost Blades for that bonus damage, Crystal Sanctuary for the crazy damage resist, Ice Sheet for the slow and snare, and then Glacial Blast, which is, of course, her bound ability, which you can use to blast yourself out of trouble. Frontline here is composed mostly of Kossars, though we do have some armored Kossars in there as well, in case I brought, say, Iron Guts or some heavily armored troops. Behind that, a bunch of Kossars with spears, armored Kossars with great weapons again, so it's a bit of a mixed bag here. Some light war sleds over here as well. Potentially, these guys could really run over the Noblar Trappers if I don't support them properly, and it's just a horde of Kossars making up a box here. And out on the flanks, we do have some Bear Cav backed by 2 Snow Leopards, making for a very potent cavalry force. The Snow Leopards, if they get into melee, will, especially when they're screened like this by bears. By themselves, they're very flimsy and squishy, but with the backing of bear support, they'll really be able to shred Mournfangs. And you can see these Mournfangs already down 5 models from Grom. Grom's just having an absolute field day as these bears sally out, charging down, and I'm trying to run like hell with the Saber Tusks. I do not want to get caught out here. These guys are fleeing for the hills, and unfortunately, once the Snow Leopards catch them, yeah, that's going to be a problem. 67 speed, all of a sudden I can get caught by everything here. We're going to be forced to fight. Out here on the flanks, and the Noblars are routing from the missile pressure. We can see the Kossars there getting roided up by Kislev's passive as the Gorgers pile in, and despite losing many models, they are getting hit down and dirty here in the pits, tearing through these terrified Kislevite soldiers. But, well, that Kislevite passive is keeping them in the fray. They're not going to be routing anytime soon, and that does mean we're going to be struggling to really break through the line. It also means that we're not going to be getting much value out of our Ogre map-wide abilities. The Ogre map-wide abilities are based around killing off, routing, and broken and shattered units. And unfortunately, I can't do that when those units aren't routing or shattering. We do summon a Manticore here, diving it in on the war sleds, looking to pressure them back. I want them to not fire on my important units. Slaughtermaster coming in hard, and you can see finally we do have a break on the Kossars. And this is one of the nifty things about the Noblars. Noblars can do this cleanup against Kossar infantry and Kislevite troops in general. While the Gorgers and my main troops continue pushing on, they can essentially farm me points to use my faction passives. Over here, in the meantime, the Mournfangs are swinging around the flank, while here in the pits, the Mournfangs fight tooth and nail against the Kislevite Warbears. Warbears with Crystal Sanctuary are actually unable to move, which is kind of a big limitation, and actually allows my Saber Tusks to just get a bunch of free value here, routing off the Snow Leopard. And though Kostalton does come in to help, it means my Mournfang Cav with great weapons gets an opportunity to rally and come back into the fray. So, not entirely sure this was an ideal cast here. I can see why you'd use it, just trying to get that damage resist in a big pit fight, but it also does hamstring you a little bit as well. Fortunately for the Bears, they do get to use that bonus for larger Saber Tusks. Saber Tusks are a large unit, and you can see they're getting minced here by the Warbears. Here in the pits, in the meantime, the Noblars shutting down the great weapon Kossars, just bogging them down in the pits here. While at the same time, more Noblar infantry continues pouring into the fray, and Mournfang Cav, despite the ice sheet, plowing through and looking to pressure off these war sleds as well as the Little Grom. And you can see we're just piling in from all angles, all sides, looking to get into that fight. While our infantry and a handful of these remaining Mournfang Cav, the Iron Fists, are doing their best to just clean up an Aisle 9 here in the back line, slowly but surely cracking the Kislevite forces. And once again, as they start routing, we are able to pursue them with the Noblars, kill off some models, and that will charge up our abilities. Now the war sleds here running for dear life, trying to escape the very angry Mournfang Cav, but we do hit them with a Dismember, cutting down their speed, making them very easy prey for the Mournfang great weapons, and we are going to start cutting these guys down to size. Now, this is not a situation where having the slower war sleds would help you. Slower war sleds do fight a smidge better, and they've got more armor, but more armor is no saving grace against the great weapons. And if we can remove these war sleds while they still have half their ammo left, that will be a huge win for us, because that removes one of Indy's primary sources of damage output. Over here, Little Grom has repositioned away from the fight, but unfortunately does not have an angle of fire on anything important. You can see the Maiden here trying to chase off the Mournfang Cav, which currently being slowed by Frostbite as well as Ice Sheet. But it is getting in here on the Warbear Riders, looking to remove them from play. They're one of those units I really want gone. Because if I can isolate Kostalton and the Maiden, I feel like I've got a good chance here. Up on the high ground, the Gorgers just doing their best with their last handful of models. 4 models left, but absolute champions of the people with 104 kills there. Doing great work against the Kossars. Saber Tusk back swinging up and around, while the Mournfang Cav is slowly consolidating around our Slaughtermaster of Beasts. Now this here perhaps a little bit of a misplay, as I do push out with the Saber Tusk, looking to shut down Little Grom, but unfortunately the Noblars are kind of out of position. They're not really nearby to support. These Mournfangs are way out of position as well. We do kind of rampage there, and that does mean Indy's going to take us piecemeal, and you don't want to take on a bunch of single entities. You're getting healed up by Salak's Lullaby to boot, plus the bears here, with just a handful of your own troops. We do, however, summon a Manticore here to provide some support potentially. Warbear Rider's getting surrounded, and despite Frostblades, that's not going to make him tankier, and the Mournfangs on the charge with that mighty 68 charge bonus are just going to take the bears to pound town. They will, of course, get the Kislev passive, keeping them in the fray through thick and thin, but you can see that HP just getting chunked very rapidly. Manticore coming in and doing what it does best here, just demolishing these warbears, doing a very quick number on them. In the meantime, up on the high ground, Gorgers continue slaughtering their way through Kossars. Kossars over here kind of routing as well. And as they do so, you can see they're getting run off the field. That's allowing me to charge up my Ogre abilities. These armored Kossars can now start pulling back into the fray. And unfortunately, these Mournfangs here actually were routed off. The single entity blob is really, really powerful. And Indy definitely getting some massive value there. Able to chase me off, and he got a meaty shot in there on this Mournfang cap with Little Grom there. Little Grom, 58 kills, absolute champion here, and we're really looking to shut him down with our Iron Fists. But that, of course, means Kastalton and the Ice Maiden will be getting some free hits here. Though at least the bears are now in full rout, and we do finish him off up here. The last bear toppling to the earth, the unfortunate beast, unable to hold against the Ogre mass. Down here on the low ground, Little Grom is the target of priority. If I let Grom survive, if I'm unable to shut him down, he will come back, and I, at this point, really cannot afford to take cannonballs to the face. Manticore is rampaging in the pits. Grom, though, getting torn to shreds, and I intend to get rid of him as quick as I can. I do not want him to kind of make back, because he's just getting diced and sliced. Kossar spears up on the high ground, finally routing, as the Slaughtermaster picks apart these armored Kossars. Now, a bit of a misplay here on my part was not noticing all my scattered Noblars, and that means that I've been fighting alone. The Cav's been fighting alone against this horde of Kislevite large. I guess these Noblar trappers have finally gotten their way into the fray, but besides that, it's really not been happening. Salak's Lullaby is healing Little Grom here, helping keeping him in the fray, but I have no intention of letting him go. Trying to just pursue him to the ends of the earth here and kill him off. Another slow coming down. Indy really wants to keep him alive, understandably so. Looking to get Grom turned around, get at least a few more shots off into the Mournfang Cav, and that's exactly what I don't want to see. So we finally managed to pursue, force path, rout him off, but taking some nasty damage in the process. That Kislevite passive is super strong because you just have to pursue that unit as long as possible. Gorgers, though, pouring down these Mournfang Cav with great weapons. 2 models left, but that massive leadership of theirs helping keep them in the fray, and we are pursuing Kastalton in through the woods here, while the Saber Tusks here are escorting Little Grom off the field. So, looking at the battle, balance of power is in fact heavily in Indy's favor, but it's a bit of a misrepresentation, because if these Noblars can get in the fray while the Mournfangs and the Gorgers are still in some shape, we might have a chance still. Because I could also get my Lord in there. The Slaughtermaster does have some healing in melee. If he's able to get in here against Kastalton, he could definitely lay the smackdown on him. Kastalton doesn't have the best melee defense, 40. So, especially with our charge, we can get some meaty hits in there, disrupt him, and kill him off. Unfortunately, the Mournfang Cav with great weapons here routed off. And despite our best efforts here, the Frost Maiden is kind of sticking around. It's been very difficult to remove her from play. She's just very, very stubborn. And though we do isolate her here a little bit, she is going to be fighting her way clear of another trap, especially as Kastalton is getting near, and I really don't want to fight Kastalton. Surrounded here. Even the Saber Tusks are bigger than her on top of her Kislevite horse there. But I leave the Saber Tusks here thinking maybe the Saber Tusks can do okay against her. Pull them into Kastalton after hitting them all both with a dismember to keep them trapped here. But unfortunately, the Saber Tusks are out. With no support, their low model count just means they aren't the low leftover model count, I should say, means they don't stick around. They do flee from the field. Mournfang Iron Fist down to 4 models. My great weapons returned with 2. But Kastalton is, I believe, at this stage out of Salak's Lullaby, so he's not going to get any more healing. But that said, he is still a mighty combatant. 3,300 or HP is pretty monstrous to deal with, and he does have the Frost Maiden to provide some magical support too. And you can see Frost Blades here coming down, allowing him to just slug it out with these Gorgers down in 1 model. They finally do fall, and that is going to leave the Mournfang Cav with Iron Fists here just doing their best. The great weapons here pursuing the Frost Maiden. I just wanted to keep her off the field while I stall for my Noblars to get back in the fray. But this entire fight is allowing me to stick around for a very long time. Panzerpenetrable Belt here goes down a little too late. The Mournfang Cav are routed from the field. And Kastalton just kind of walks away. I'm not going to be able to pen him in with a bunch of silly Gnoblars. The Slaughtermaster Beast is too slow, 54 speed. He does get a mighty swing in there last second, but once Kostalton is free, he bowls over a Gnoblar, and he is going to flee from the angry ogres. In the meantime, the Mournfang Cav here pursuing the Frost Maiden, trying to really get rid of her, but she pops her icy explosion there, I believe, and slows us down. And that means that the Mournfang Cav has a moment where they're not quite able to catch her. But finally, Indy decides enough is enough, turns around, pivots, and decides to countercharge the Mournfangs. After all, the Frost Maiden is not the worst combatant. I do believe she has better stats than Empire Wizards. She gets a nice swing in there, the Mournfang Cav start wavering, and they're actually going to rout to this heroic lady of Kislev. That's brave lady of the steppes, and she does pursue the Mournfang Cav to their deaths. Indy's not having them returned. That has definitely been a theme of this game, not allowing units to come back to the fray if at all possible. And yeah, the Mournfang Cav is going to get cut down to size here by the Frost Maiden. So, brutal stuff. In the meantime, that just leaves our Slaughtermaster as well as Kostalton. You can see the Slaughtermaster's healed a little bit there with his Cleaver. So that means he's got a bit of an HP edge on Kostalton. And at this point, it's definitely looking a bit grim for the Force of Kislev. Bounce of Power swinging heavily in my favor. Going to be a little bit of Benny Hill action here. As I do try to catch these guys with a Dismember, but Indy decides to back away while Dismember is active. Smart move, and then pivots around to countercharge for a bit of a last engagement here. Again, a last stand against the Slaughtermaster. We are on fire. We do pop Phantom Patrol Belt on ourselves. You can see Tor's Battle Helm and Crystal Sanctuary going down. The Frost Maiden does get the boost from her faction passive, but at this point she's very low on HP. There's very little she can do. She's kind of stuck on the outskirts there. She has no healing. Kostalton himself down to 2,000 HP and getting torn to shreds. And the Gnoblars are going to be nipping at his heels. Certainly they're not going to hit very often, but they are going to be chopping away at him. You can see he's in very good vigor shape, which is one of those cool things to see. All my troops here are exhausted. He's actually active right now, so that means his combat stats are actually what the card says, or mostly what the card says. And that's definitely going to be helping him in this fight. Unfortunately, not quite enough. It doesn't matter just how powerful his stats are if he's just getting hit from every angle. The Frost Maiden as well, she's still fresh. Then that is the benefit of that hymn that provides the Dodge's Song of Winter, providing vigor. So Kostalton's passive there triggers. Urson's Roar pops off. He's got extra leadership, which kind of wasted. That doesn't really do much for you at this stage. But I say wasted, but there isn't really. It doesn't hurt either at this stage. He's not able to break out. We do get some meaty blows in. She's trying to fight the Slaughtermaster, but we're keeping him penned in with a horde of Gnoblars, and distracted, more importantly, by Gnoblars. We're just being sent flying. Gnoblars against Bear, not the most even of fights, and as we do try to pursue him here, Kostalton just getting chopped to death, and it's going to be a gold tooth victory. So, a very fun back and forth, where honestly came down right down to the wire. Little Grom here getting some value, and just looking at the builds, certain units just really performed well. Gnoblars doing some great work pursuing units off the field, and that cannot be, I think, sort of understated. They soaked up a lot of damage early on from the bows, and then they managed to chase off a lot of these Kislevite troops that would have otherwise come back. And even a handful of missile units at the end game, a single unit of Kossars would have potentially swung that last fight if they'd just been able to shoot the Slaughtermaster. Because Gnoblars were not going to win that by themselves. They needed the help, and just having a single unit or two of Kossars could have made all the difference in the world. That said, I don't think Ogre Infantry in that same situation would have just gotten shot to death, and that's why we didn't bring any of them except the Gorgers, who were stalked, so they were able to sneak up on the Kislevite troops. Saber-Tusks, unfortunately, at least two, well, they did okay, I guess. All of them are paid for themselves. Bit of a throwaway unit, but coming back repeatedly and demolishing the Kislevite Light Infantry and chasing off the Little Grom and damaging the Frost Maiden and all that definitely made him work pretty well. Main winners here were definitely the Mournfang with great weapons and the Iron Fists that came in from the left flank. Right flank boys got kind of caught out and crushed, so they didn't have too much of a good time. Slaughtermaster, of course, got some value of the Manticore summon that isn't shown here, but 1100 on a Caster Lord is not bad. He's fairly cheap in this form, so he's got some pretty good value there. Gorgers basically paid for themselves. For Indy here, the Bears did absolute work. Unfortunately, there just wasn't enough of them. One unit of Bears was not enough to carry against 5 units of cavalry. even with the support of the Snow Leopards. And the Snow Leopards didn't quite hold up or do as much damage as they really needed to in that fight. They got a little bit isolated and separated from the bears. You really need to keep them together as a unit to get maximum value. Snow Leopards are very potent. They can absolutely demolish Ogre cavalry with their reasonable single target weapon strength, but not when they get caught out by themselves. Castalton, though, champion, 1600 damage. Frost Maiden didn't do that much, but her snares were very frustrating to deal with. Little Grom almost paid for himself, managed to really scythe down some Mournfang Cav, did some great work there. The Light War Sled, despite being shut down very early, still racked up 1280 damage value. That's well over its value. It's a 950 gold unit, so that's pretty insane. Otherwise, Armored Cossars did rather well, but the regular Cossars really just got mulched. They got run over by the combination. Some of them did pay for themselves, or close to pay for themselves, but they really just got overrun. Not able to dent the heavy armor on the Mournfang Cav, and kind of wasted, stuck fighting 200 gold Noblars. But really well played to Indy there. I do think a lot of, if you're not going to do missile heavy, because I do think at this point, especially the Lead Belchers and Iron Blasters are just kind of overpowered for Ogre Kingdoms. One is free to disagree, but I think they just are. Their stat lines are just really insane. Their tankiness, their mobility, their model counts, their leadership. They're just very, very strong units. Especially Chevron up, the Iron Blaster with a is essentially a Luminarch that is really good against multi-entity units as well, and is way more mobile and way tankier. So yeah, just an infinitely better Luminarch, and that really makes it pretty potent. But if you're not going to go for artillery heavy builds, and keep in mind your opponent's probably going to build around that. You can see here Little Grom brought to specifically counter snipe Lead Belchers and the like. Certainly Little Grom's generally good against ogres because he kills most of their models in a single hit, except a handful of single entities. But so you'll definitely see builds sort of more centered around countering it, maybe more heavy missile pressure. But at the same time, if you're not going to go with missiles, I think Cav's going to be the way to go. Normal ogres just get shot to death, especially by a faction like Kislev. Maybe against some of the demonic factions, you can get away with melee heavy armies or melee infantry heavy armies. But against Kislev and maybe Cathay, I think cavalry is the way to go. You've got good armor values, you've got great mobility. Most of the enemy infantry is not going to be able to do too much of damage to you. Throw in a unit of Gorgers just to provide some sort of longer-term grind potential, backed by Noblars, Sabertusk to disrupt, and a decent support caster, and you're really, really set. Maybe it's one of the bigger monsters as well, maybe a Thundertusk or the like. But I think Cav's the way to go. Really fun build, really fun match though. Really fun build to play around with. Hope you guys enjoyed. Great game to Indy Pride, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.